Canelo Alvarez returns and he TKOs Avni Yildirim in the third round. Let's talk about it. Well, good Sunday evening to you fight fans. Last night, Saul Canelo Alvarez defends his super middleweight title and knocks out Avni Yildirim in the third round. Actually, he couldn't come out after the third round. Let's talk about some pros and cons. First of all, I did pick, like all of you, Alvarez to win this fight, but I picked Alvarez to win by UD. I thought that Avni would get in the ring and use his length and move around and maybe, at least have some pride to try to go the distance. I thought it would be a one-sided Canelo win, but I did not actually think he would knock him out. Let's start with some pros and the cons. Let's start with Avni first. No pros really for him. I didn't really like his game plan at all. They kept saying that he was working his game plan. I didn't see what the game plan was. So I was going to go right to the cons. Number one, for a guy taller than Canelo, he kept stooping down. Number two, he was standing right in front of Alvarez. He wasn't moving his feet. I don't know if his game plan was they were going to walk him down. I'm not exactly sure. I just know that I didn't like the game plan I saw. If the game plan was put your mitts up high, stand in front of Alvarez and just get hit, then I guess he perfected his game plan. Let's move on to Canelo. The pros. His power looked good at 168. I know this is not his first fight at 168, but he looked big and strong in there. He kind of looked like a 168 version of Marvin Hagler to me. That guy that's about 5'9" and built like a tank. His hand speed was good. His upper body movement was good. He really didn't get hit much in this fight. I love the angles. I love the uppercuts he was throwing, and I love the body work. I'm a body work guy. Canelo was throwing. He was determined to throw that left hook to the body, and he was determined to throw that. And he was also throwing that straight right to the body. As for my cons, for the second fight in a row, I'm going to say nothing. No cons for Alvarez. I thought he fought a good fight. Let's talk about the fight a little bit. Avni definitely was outmatched. I think it had a lot to do with his game plan. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, his game plan was terrible. If his game plan was to try to bully Alvarez, it was a terrible game plan. Alvarez has good power. He may be, quote, the smaller man, but he hits hard at super middleweight. It wasn't really a whole lot to really break down from both sides because Avni really didn't do anything. It was really all Canelo. He was landing pretty much wherever he wanted to land. And even though I picked Alvarez by unanimous decision after that first round, I knew that Avni was going to get knocked out because you can't stand in front of Alvarez that long and think you're going to last the fight. And if you look at his fight against Smith back in December, not only is he a lot taller, but at least he was moving around the ring and trying to give some different angles. This dude was just standing right there in front of Alvarez like he had cement shoes on. That's pretty much it for that. Let's talk about something else. Let's move on. We don't have to guess what's going to be next because Eddie Hearn in the ring already said what's going to be next. Billy Joe Saunders. I love it. It's happening in May. And I'm glad to see Canelo take another big step. Look, say what you want to say about Canelo, but Canelo fights big names. Don't tell me about Avni being a bum and all that nonsense. It was a mandatory. He fought it, got it out the way. Now he's moving on to a bigger and better fight. You have to love Alvarez. He gives you what you want. He fights. If you see a name out there, he's going to fight that guy. He hasn't ducked anybody. He hasn't sidestepped anybody. He's just going full steam ahead. Now, there is something that I do want to talk about that I saw on Twitter earlier that I think is kind of nonsense. I don't know what you all think about it, but why are people still talking about Saul Alvarez and Floyd Mayweather? Listen, that fight was about it was about 7.5 years ago. Fight was 7.5 years ago. He was fighting against one of the greatest fighters to ever fight, and people are still talking about it. Look, let's just put this to bed once and for all. Floyd was not in his prime. He was past his prime. Excuse me. He was past his prime. And Alvarez was not in his prime yet. He was actually in his early years. Now, I know people will say Alvarez became a pro at 15, and he was 23 at this time. He had 8 years of experience, but 23 is not your prime years. That's why what Teofimo did a couple of months ago against Lomachenko was such a big deal, because he did it before he even hit his prime. Lopez is not even in his prime yet. Alvarez is now in his prime. At the time, he wasn't, and yes, he got schooled by Mayweather. People say, well, what would have happened if they would have fought at 147 or 154 in their prime? Guess what, people? We're never going to know, because these guys are 13 years apart, so we're never going to know prime for prime what would have happened. Listen, Floyd won that fight then. Today doesn't matter. Today, Canelo is the guy. I just want to bring that up because it was kind of bothering me a little bit that every time I go on Twitter after Alvarez fights, people keep bringing up Mayweather, how Mayweather schooled him, how Canelo was green, what would happen if they fought. Listen, we're not going to know. They did fight. They fought when Alvarez was a young man, and Floyd was past his prime. We saw what happened, but now it's Alvarez time. Why don't we just focus on that? It's Saul's time now. He's, like I said, in my last Canelo video, if it's not him, it's Inoue. But one of them is the pound for pound king of boxing. Why don't we celebrate Canelo and his greatness here? Let's be happy in the fact that we have a fighter out here who actually is willing to fight anybody. And I really believe that Canelo will fight anybody from 160 to 175. I honestly believe that, which leaves me with a parting thought before I get out of here. I was listening to the broadcast, and they were saying, so one of the guys said, say a name that you can put in front of Saul that we will actually say he's going to be an underdog. As of right now, I would say there is a possibility that maybe one of the top light heavyweights, maybe. But I think that the problem when a fighter is this great, like Alvarez is, we're always trying to find a way to push him higher up in weight. We want him to keep going up in weight. Listen, I was joking with somebody a few months ago, but I said, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2 to 3 years, you're hearing people talk about they want to see Canelo fight somebody that's a cruiserweight. I'm being honest, because if he fights a couple of more light heavyweights, especially if he fights like Bivol or Beterbiev, who's a big light heavyweight, and he can beat one of those guys or both of those guys, I would not be surprised if they're trying to put him up against the number 8, 9, 10 cruiserweight and say, well, why not? Let's see him really test himself. He's walking around at 185 anyway. Let's see him, go up in weight. This happens every time a fighter is great. They did it with Roy Jones. They did it with Mayweather. Every time a guy's great, we just keep talking about we want to see them go up in weight. Let Canelo do his thing. Let him fight guys at middleweight. Let him fight guys at super middleweight. And when he's ready, maybe let's see him fight guys at light heavyweight. All right, I went on a little bit longer than I planned on in this video. I figure I'll give you a little bit more because the fight wasn't very long. But give me your thoughts on it. Did you enjoy the fight? Did it go down how you expect? Did you pick Alvarez by knockout? I picked him by decision. Did you pick him by knockout? Were you impressed? And what do you think about Canelo Saunders coming up in May? Otherwise, if you haven't already, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Why? Because every time you do, we get to talk boxing. Other than that, fight fans, that's all I got. Holla at y'all later.